There is a precise psychological phenomenon that tends to occur right before a human life undergoes a radical expansion. Carl Jung called it the enantiodromia, the moment an internal force reaches its absolute limit and appears to flip into its opposite. If you are watching this, you may not be failing. You might be standing at the tipping point. Think of a bow and arrow. To launch the arrow forward with power, it must first be drawn backward under intense tension into the dark. That tension, that feeling of being pulled back while the rest of the world seems to move forward, tends to be the primary signal that your greatest launch may be imminent. Jung observed that before the best chapter of a person's life, there is an almost total withdrawal of psychological energy from the outer world. Your career can begin to feel like a script you've forgotten the lines to. Your social circle may feel like a room slowly running out of air. This isn't depression. It may be the ego's final stand. The version of you that carried you here cannot carry you there. You're currently being dismantled so that the unlived life within you can finally take form. Most people tend to quit during this phase because they mistake the silence for emptiness. But as Jung famously observed, in all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Today, we are going to explore 5 specific psychological markers that may indicate your current delay is actually a profound setup for a life that could eventually leave you breathless with recognition. To understand why your life might feel like it is currently dissolving, we must first confront the most sophisticated architecture in the human psyche, the persona. In Latin, the word persona did not refer to a person's character. It referred to the clay or wooden masks worn by actors in ancient Greek and Roman theater. These masks served a dual purpose. They projected a specific social role to the audience, and they functioned as a megaphone, amplifying the actor's voice so it could reach the furthest seats. Carl Jung observed that every modern human being tends to wear such a mask. It is a functional necessity of the ego. It is the professional you, the polite you, the accommodating you. It is the version of yourself you may have spent decades refining so that society would offer you safety, status, and a sense of belonging. The persona is how you negotiate with the world. It is the social skin that shields your sensitive inner core from the friction of the collective. But here is the danger that Jung devoted his life to illuminating. The persona is a utility, not an identity. Jung wrote that one of the deepest tragedies of the human soul tends to emerge when we become identical with our masks. When you spend decades being the reliable one, the dependable provider, or the composed leader, the ego can fall into a dangerous trance. It begins to believe that the mask is the face. You stop being a living, breathing, multifaceted soul and start functioning as a performance. You are no longer fully living your life. You are managing a brand. You may have exchanged the gold of your authentic nature for the currency of social acceptance. If you are still watching this, you are already part of the rare few who are willing to face what most people spend their entire lives running from. 97% of people scroll past content like this, not because it does not reach them, but because it reaches them too deeply. If this is already moving something inside you, subscribe to Carl Jung Psychology right now and turn on notifications. What you're about to hear does not just explain the psychology of transformation, it may permanently change how you see yourself. The primary signal that you may be standing on the threshold of your best chapter is the onset of what Jungian analysts sometimes call psychological bankruptcy. consider your psychic energy as a kind of currency. Every time you smile when you're actually grieving, every time you say yes to a project that drains your soul, every time you suppress a radical idea to avoid disrupting the room, you're paying a hidden tax. It requires an immense amount of soul capital to keep the mask in place. For years, you may have been running a concealed deficit. You may have been drawing energy from your future, from your vitality, and from your unlived aspirations just to sustain the performance of your current life. Then, one day, the bank of the subconscious appears to close its doors. Suddenly, the role that once came so naturally seems impossible to perform. You sit in a meeting, and the corporate language feels like cold sand in your mouth. You attend a gathering with old friends, and the small talk feels like a physical pressure on your chest. You look in the mirror and barely recognize the face looking back, not because you have changed physically, but because the mask has grown too heavy for your spirit to carry. To those around you, your colleagues, your partner, your peers, this may look like a breakdown. They might suggest you have lost your edge or that you seem burned out. But from a Jungian perspective, this is not a sign of collapse. It may be a sign of subconscious rebellion. Your soul appears to be on strike. It has recognized that the vessel of your current life is too narrow for the person you are in the process of becoming. Jung suggested that this bankruptcy can function as a kind of intervention from the deeper self, the totality of the psyche. Your soul may be intentionally withdrawing its investment from the old life. It appears to be divesting from the persona because it needs that energy to begin constructing the sovereign self. In this stage, you might notice a strange, quiet indifference to things that once consumed you. You might find yourself becoming more inward, less performative for the first time. You stop orienting around being liked and begin orienting around being authentic. This isn't a loss of social grace. It may be the earliest stirring of sovereignty. You are beginning to sense that your rare personality was never designed to fit inside a standardized mold. This is sometimes called the death of the good child. Most of us are shaped from an early age to be the good child, the one who fulfills the unlived dreams of parents or meets the expectations of the culture. But as we approach our highest chapter, that good child persona can begin to feel hollow. The sudden selfishness you might feel in this phase could actually be the first spark of individuation. You may find you are no longer willing to trade your soul for a seat at a table where you are not truly seen. It is an uncomfortable, sometimes violent internal process. It can feel like a loss of power, because perhaps the only power you have ever known was the power of the mask. But Jung taught that the mask may need to shatter so that the gold of the golden shadow can be reclaimed. When the mask dissolves, you are left standing without the shield of your title, your reputation, or your agreeableness. You are left with only what is real. And while that can feel terrifying, it may also be the only state in which you become genuinely capable of receiving what the best chapter has to offer. If you feel like you cannot keep the performance going anymore, if the act is fading and the audience's recognition no longer fills you, that may not mean you are failing at life. It may mean you are failing at playing a character in a story that was never written for you. The ghost is leaving the machine. And in that silence, something more real begins to speak. As you move through the dismantling of your persona, you may enter a second stage, what could be described as an invasion. Carl Jung once noted that nothing tends to have a stronger psychological influence on the environment, and especially on children, than the unlived life of the parents. But what often goes unexamined is that this unlived life does not only shadow the next generation, it may shadow you. As you approach the best chapter of your life, the aspects of yourself you have suppressed, shelved, or set aside to survive the first half of your journey can begin to stir. In your earlier years, you likely made a series of necessary, yet quietly painful, trades. You may have muted your creative intensity to feel secure. You may have silenced your restless spirit to be accepted. You may have buried an unconventional, rare side of yourself beneath a layer of conformity. Jung believed that these suppressed dimensions of the psyche do not simply disappear. They descend into the shadow where they ferment. They wait. When you are on the edge of a significant life transition, these dormant forces can stop waiting. You might notice an inexplicable pull toward a language you have never spoken, a craft you have never practiced, or a philosophy that seems to contradict everything you were taught to believe. You might find yourself gazing out of windows, sensing a pull toward a life that looks almost nothing like your current one. To the ego, the manager of your daily existence, this may feel like a midlife disruption or a loss of direction. But in the Jungian framework, it may actually be the architecture of your new self leaking through the cracks. The best chapter of your life seems to require a version of you that is whole, not just polished. Most people invest their lives in trying to be perfect, but Jung's aim was wholeness. Perfection requires the removal of everything inconvenient. Wholeness requires the integration of everything you left behind. The unlived life is the collection of all those missing pieces. It is the gold you set down in the dark because you thought it was too heavy to carry while climbing the social ladder. This is why, right before a major life expansion, you might feel a profound and unexpected grief. You might grieve for the artist you didn't allow yourself to become. You might grieve for the risk you didn't take. This grief tends to be a vital signal. It may be the unlived life asking to be mourned so that it can finally be integrated. In this phase, you might notice vivid symbolic dreams, or what Jung called active imagination. You might dream of forgotten rooms or encounter strangers in your subconscious who feel more intimately known than people you have lived beside for years. These may be the ambassadors of your unlived life, returning to offer you what you will need for your next chapter. The world may tell you it is too late. It may call you a late bloomer as though that were a consolation. But Jungian psychology tends to suggest that the most magnificent growth is often the slowest. The unlived life is not a catalog of missed chances. It may be a reservoir of untapped power. If you feel a sudden, seemingly irrational urge to change direction, a hunger that achievement cannot satisfy, consider not suppressing it. You may be receiving a direct invitation from your own soul. Before we go further, if this is already beginning to resonate, if something in these words is reflecting a pattern you recognize in your own life, this is the exact kind of content that Carl Jung psychology is built for. Every week we go deeper into the territories most people never explore. Subscribe now and turn on the bell. The next insight could be the one that shifts everything. As you move through the dismantling of the persona and the return of the unlived life, you may arrive at what can feel like the most disorienting stage of the transformation, the breaking of the social mirror. For most of your existence, you have likely lived reflectively. From very early on, you used the people around you, parents, teachers, peers, partners, as mirrors to tell you who you were. If they smiled, you were good. If they promoted you, you were capable. If they sought your presence, you were worthy. This is the social mirror, and for many people, it remains the primary way they navigate reality. But as you stand on the threshold of the best chapter of your life, something unexpected can occur. The mirrors seem to stop reflecting you. You may find yourself in what might be called a state of sacred isolation. It often begins with a quiet sense of frequency mismatch. You sit with people you have known for years, and you realize with a sinking recognition that you no longer speak quite the same language. Their concerns feel distant. Your internal shifts feel impossible to translate. You try to explain what you are experiencing, and you are met with blank expressions, or perhaps more difficult, practical advice about returning to who you used to be. This may be the moment the mirror shatters. You realize that the people currently in your life may only be able to see the ghost of who you were. They cannot yet perceive the person you are in the process of becoming. To the ego, this can feel like catastrophe. It can feel like loneliness, like disappearing from the social fabric. You might experience a period where your phone falls silent, where invitations slow, or where you voluntarily pull back from the world because the performance of social interaction has become genuinely exhausting. Most people tend to panic here. They may try to repair their relationships or perform their way back into the group. But Jungian psychology suggests this isolation is not a punishment. It may be a form of strategic incubation. Jung observed that significant psychological growth rarely seems to occur while you are being constantly verified by the external world. As long as you are dependent on a reflection, you remain tethered to the mirror. To develop inner authority, you may need to pass through a period where there is no external reflection at all. You may need to learn to exist in the uncertainty of the self until your own inner light becomes sufficient to navigate by. This is sometimes described as the birth of inner authority. When the social mirror breaks, you are pressed toward the most confronting question in the human psyche. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one is applauding? Who are you when there is no title to shelter behind? Most people may never fully sit with these questions because the silence is difficult to tolerate. But for the rare personality, this silence may be precisely where the real gold is discovered. Jung suggested that the best chapter of a life tends to be marked by a gradual shift from external validation to internal verification. You stop being a reaction to the world and begin to function as a source within it. Think of the bamboo tree. For years, it shows almost no visible growth above the ground. It is invisible to the world, but beneath the surface, it is quietly constructing an enormous, intricate root system. When the season arrives, it can grow dramatically in a single period. You may currently be in the root phase. The isolation could be the very condition that protects you while you are being rewired. Jung spoke of the temenos, a sacred enclosed space where deep psychological work could unfold without interference. Your current solitude may be functioning as that temenos. It may be a boundary your subconscious has drawn around you to filter out the noise of the world while the music of your future self is being composed. The sign that this stage may be completing itself is a quiet, growing sense of indifference to external approval. You stop explaining yourself to people who were never going to understand. You stop needing the mirror because you are beginning to carry your own light. You discover a still, quiet ease in your own company. You might begin to sense that being out of step with a world that seems deeply out of alignment is actually a rare form of clarity. After the persona has dissolved, the unlived life has returned, and the social mirror has broken, You may arrive at what could be the most counterintuitive threshold of the Jungian journey, the stage of active surrender. For the high achiever, the persistent striver, or the person who has spent their life pressing to make things happen, this stage can feel like a betrayal of everything they have ever understood. It can feel like giving up. But in the architecture of the soul, it may be the exact opposite. It could be the moment the owner of the house finally offers the keys to the architect. Jung observed that the modern ego tends to function as a colonizing force. It believes that through willpower, logic, and relentless effort, it can bend the universe to its design. We are often taught from early on that if our lives are not working, we must push harder. But as you approach the best chapter of your life, you may discover a quietly terrifying truth. The harder you push, the further the horizon seems to recede. This is perhaps because the best chapter is less a destination reached through force and more a frequency arrived at through alignment. Jung described this as the shift from the ego to the self. The ego is the smaller, conscious part of you that seeks safety, recognition, and certainty. The self is the deeper totality of your psyche, a vast interior intelligence that may know precisely why you're here and what you're genuinely capable of. Before a breakthrough, these two forces are often in tension. The ego wants the safe path, but the self appears to want expansion. Active surrender is not passivity. Passivity is inaction, born from hopelessness. Active surrender is full engagement while remaining genuinely unattached to the specific outcome. It might be described as the state of the master archer who draws the bowstring with complete focus, but releases the arrow without grasping for the target. In this phase, your relationship with time and effort may shift noticeably. You find yourself less consumed by chasing and more capable of allowing. Your delays may begin to feel less like obstacles and more like calibrations. You begin to sense that the universe was not withholding from you. It may have been waiting for you to release the grip so it could finally guide. Jung spoke extensively about synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that tend to appear when the internal and external worlds move into alignment. When you enter a genuine state of active surrender, these synchronicities may begin to accelerate. A chance conversation, a book that seems to appear at precisely the right moment, a quiet intuition that leads somewhere unexpected. These may be signals that you have shifted from the posture of someone life is happening to, toward the posture of someone life is beginning to move through. This is the shift from willpower to willingness. Willpower is the ego attempting to bend the world to its image. Willingness may be the self opening its doors to possibilities that the ego could never have designed on its own. This is why, right before a significant life shift, many people report a quiet, unexpected calm settling into the middle of the storm. Their circumstances may still appear unresolved from the outside. They may still be in transition, still uncertain, but the anxiety of the chase seems to have released. They are no longer pressing the river. They have, in some quiet way, become the river. We have now arrived at what may be the final gate, and perhaps the most formidable. You have moved through the bankruptcy of the persona. You have navigated the return of the unlived life. You have survived the shattering of the social mirror and discovered the paradox of active surrender. Now you stand before what Jung called the integration of the golden shadow. Most people are familiar with the shadow as the psychological basement, the place where we conceal anger, shame, and grief. But Jung made a striking observation. We may be more afraid of our light than our darkness. Within the shadow lies what he called the golden shadow. This is where your highest capacities tend to reside. Your rare personality, your deepest wisdom, your capacity for genuine, lasting impact. The best chapter of your life may have been delayed not because you were not capable enough, but perhaps because you were afraid of being as great as you actually are. You may have spent years dimming your presence so as not to unsettle others or attract the sting of envy. You may have told yourself that staying modest was a form of integrity. Jung might have described this as a form of spiritual self-abandonment. He seemed to believe that the refusal to realize one's own potential was among the deepest roots of psychological suffering. The final signal that your life may be approaching a significant shift is a quiet, uncomfortable realization. You can no longer locate your old excuses. The story that you were too late, too damaged, or too far behind slowly stops holding together. You begin to sense that your past struggles were not barriers to your becoming, but the very terrain that shaped you for it. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment. Every failure deepened your resilience. Every dark night taught you how to find your way in the absence of light. This is sometimes described as alchemical transmutation. You take the weight of your past experiences and, through the sustained heat of honest reflection, you begin to recognize that what once felt like lead may have always contained gold. Integrating the golden shadow tends to mean finally claiming your rare personality. If you are an outlier, you may find yourself less interested in fitting in and more drawn to building your own world. If you are a late bloomer, you might stop apologizing for your timing and begin to recognize that the depth your path has given you may be something early success simply cannot replicate. You stop searching for a guide who holds the answers and slowly realize that the authority you have been seeking may have always resided in your own chair. In this stage, your language can shift. You move from hoping toward declaring. You move from asking whether something is possible toward asking how you might participate in bringing it forward. You move from the seeker who is perpetually searching for the truth toward the person who is, at last, beginning to live it. Jung taught that the aim of human life is individuation, to become the specific, unrepeatable self that only you can be. The best chapter of your life may simply be the outward expression of this inward completeness. When you stop contending with yourself, the friction with the world can begin to ease. The golden shadow brings with it a quiet sense of responsibility. Your gifts are not yours to bury. They may be offerings that life has placed in your particular hands. Playing small is unlikely to be humility. It may be a quiet withdrawal from the life force itself. When you finally begin to claim your gold, you may notice that synchronicity becomes a more constant companion. The obstacles that once felt immovable begin to shift, not necessarily because luck has arrived, but perhaps because alignment has deepened. You may sense that you have reached the end of the transition when the fear of remaining the same begins to outweigh the fear of changing. The vessel of the old life may feel so thoroughly transformed that return is no longer where your energy naturally flows. The only direction that feels alive is forward. This is sometimes described as the birth of the Creator. You step into your new chapter not as someone who narrowly escaped, but as someone who consciously chose to walk through. You look back at the interior darkness you moved through and begin to see it differently, not as punishment, but as preparation. the process was not designed to break you. It may have been designed to break the mask so that what lives beneath it could finally breathe. If you are watching this and you feel something stir, a shiver of recognition that moves below language, that may be your golden shadow signaling. It may be your best chapter asking to be allowed in. Jung's deepest offering to us was not a system or a method. It was a form of radical hope. He wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." You have moved through the fire. You have paid the tax of the persona. You have survived the silence of the void. Now the question is not whether you are ready. The question may be whether you are willing. Your best chapter is not a future event you are waiting on. It may be a present quality of being that gradually reveals itself as a lived reality. It tends to begin not with a dramatic moment, but with a quiet internal decision, the moment you stop waiting for permission to be who you already are. Before you leave, take a single moment and drop a comment below. If something in this resonated, if you recognized your own reflection somewhere in these stages, type the number 1111 below. In Jungian psychology, the pattern you notice is the pattern that notices you back. When you mark this moment with intention, you're not simply leaving a comment. You may be making a quiet declaration to your subconscious that the work of becoming is something you are choosing to take seriously. And if you know someone who is currently in the middle of their own crucible, someone who feels like they are falling apart without realizing they may actually be falling into place, consider sharing this with them. Sometimes the most important synchronicity in someone's life arrives through another person who is paying attention. Your best chapter is not a distant promise. It may already be in motion.